Federal Hill Rec Center.
Yep, yep. Well, and also even when you were at Mervo for a little bit, we connected. But it has like, yeah, there's been.
Yes, my Marvel tour duty. I forgot all about that because we had the 3D printers there. We were doing some work with Project Lead the Way, Sean Kerr. That was a good time.
Yep. Yeah. No, but excited to have you in this or be in this conversation with you, and yeah, I think I'd seen that you were up at North Avenue, but I just haven't caught up. So I guess we're having a little mini reunion here. Sorry, everybody. I had one earlier today with John Turner as well, but that's
We have to get together.
yeah, exactly. Well, I'm glad to see you, Commissioner Sally. Yeah, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry about that. It has been a harrowing day for me.
But you're here. You're here, and you're okay. You're all in one piece.
Yeah, which is like the most important thing. Are we? Let me see. So Commissioner Esposito, I see, is here. So Commissioner Griffin cannot be here today, so she asked me to fill in. Of course, when I'm having life issues, but Commissioner Esposito, are you now on this committee? I just want to make sure.
Yes, she is.
Okay.
How are you, everyone? Yes, she is now part of the policy committee.
Okay. Give me 5 seconds. I'm so sorry. I cannot log in. It is that day. How are you doing, Commissioner Esposito?
Good.
Good. I'm glad to hear. Tanisha, do we need to do a formal opening for this meeting?
No, you can go ahead and get started.
Okay. I am very thankful for everybody and your patience this afternoon with rescheduling by a half an hour just to accommodate my personal needs. So thank you. And let me just bring up our agenda.
We anticipating Commissioner Katzogby joining us today.
He is supposed to join, is what I understood. But Tanisha, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe last information that you received is the last that I received. I don't mind reaching out in addition.
Should we hold off for just a few minutes?
No, I think you should proceed.
Okay, all right, great. So before we get started today, I noticed we have one public comment, person signed up for public comment. If there are others who wish to sign up this afternoon, we more than welcome folks from the public joining us for today's meeting. Our agenda is pretty short. So we have one item that is policy KIB, the sex offender registry revisions to address the state law changes, public comment period, and then next steps and adjournment. And certainly we're happy to discuss any other issues that need to be discussed this afternoon. Are there anything any of my fellow commissioners would like to address before we get started? All right. So I'll turn it over. Oh, Commissioner Esposito, sorry.
I was just going to say I'm excited to join.
I'm excited to have you. This is your first committee meeting, right? For policy?
Yes, yeah. And I had my first operations earlier. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So you are getting the full lay of the land here in Baltimore City. So one of the things I really like about this committee is it gives us an opportunity to really talk about the issues that are both kind of forward-looking and rear-facing as well. And so, and really, we really rely on the collective brain power of all of our committee members, as well as our city school staff and the public and students, to really help us think through what we're seeing in front of us, and then where does it go from here. So, but I'm glad you're with us. Welcome. Okay, so I'll turn it over to staff for presentation on policy KIB. Tanisha, do you know? Oh, Cora, how are you? Oh, you're muted. This is one of the team's challenges.
Yes. Hi. So I'm on, I think Sabri is going to be projecting for me.
Okay.
If not, I can just start. Oh, yeah, there she is.
Yeah, Cora, can you project it and I can just move it along?
Okay.
Thank you.
Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, great. Okay, everyone. My name is Cora Parson. I'm the Special Assistant to the Chief of Schools, and I, in conjunction with the Office of Legal Counsel, will be presenting the revisions to Board Policy KIB, which is the Sex Offender Registry revisions to address our state laws. Basically, this presentation aligns with Strategic Board Policies 1, 4, and 5. So we're going to just go over a quick overview of what the current rule is that applies to staff and students. Before the revisions were made, students who were enrolled in Baltimore City Public Schools were allowed to be on the school premises, even if they were registered sex offenders previously. And this permission was allowed based on the discretion of the school leader, if the child was allowed to stay in school and or if their parent was allowed to be on school grounds. Just to give a quick overview as to why we're reviewing this, just to give some context, there was an incident that happened in 2019 in Baltimore County where there was a registered sex offender who was convicted and allowed to return back and re-enroll into a school. And then subsequently after that re-enrollment, he was arrested for then assaulting another student. So with that being implemented, Maryland state lawmakers decided in 2021 to implement some changes in the law to protect students inside of our schools. And just as I just stated, the law was changed in 2021, Bill 515, and it now prohibits students who are registered sex offenders from entering a school property. However, we will go over those changes and what we are doing in Baltimore City Public Schools, as we are still responsible for ensuring that these students receive the proper education. MSDE did provide a model for us to base the policy changes on. And we reviewed those policies. We reviewed the model policy, and then based on those, we kept a lot of pretty much all of the guidance, and we just tailored it to suit the needs of our Baltimore City Public School students. And the specific portion which is just applicable to Baltimore City Public Schools is we have the virtual learning program, in addition to a hybrid option of home and hospital, as well as the re-engagement center. So those are the options for our students if indeed we do come across a student enrolled in Baltimore City Public Schools who becomes a registered sex offender. I'm just going to go over a quick overview of some of the background work that went into making sure that we were in adherence with the new policy as well as the law. The Office of Legal Counsel did review our current sex offender registry, which was about 1,500 people. There were only 3 under the age of 21, and none of them were currently enrolled in Baltimore City Public Schools. The legal office, in conjunction with our city school police officers, are working with the appropriate stakeholders to ensure that we have a notification process in place so that when our juvenile students are reported and convicted as sex offenders, we can activate the changes in the systems to ensure, like I stated previously, that our students are still able to receive a full, robust learning experience, even though they are no longer allowed to be on Baltimore City Public School properties. So this is basically an overview of what would land a student on the Juvenile Sex Offender Registry. They have to at least be 14 years old and convicted of one of these crimes right here. In addition to that, these are the 4 things that would allow a student to be removed from the sex offender registry. Obviously, if they leave the state of Maryland and or the term was just expired, or they can be pardoned and have it overturned and subsequently, obviously, death. So basically, with aligning with the MSDE model, the high-level changes are basically just ensuring that there is a streamlined process for our students to have access to alternative learning that is basically aligned with our traditional school standards. We've worked with our partners in special education, enrollment assurance and transfer, the Re-Engagement Center, Home and Hospital, as well as our virtual learning partners to ensure that we can come up with a plan that is properly aligned with what our students who are in our traditional brick and mortar schools receive, to ensure that the students' learning plan is adhered to, as well as to ensure that they stay on track to graduate. And so with that being said, there also is a flip side to this, which I just spoke on. We also have come up with a strategic plan in order to ensure that if the child does become removed from the sex offender registry, that we have a proper transition plan to have them back into our brick and mortar schools and continue their education as they received it in the virtual learning program or one of our alternative plans. So this just goes over some of the high-level revisions that we have considered when changing the policy. And just to be sure, we tried to ensure that everything was aligned with what we already have. I already spoke about making sure that our student registrants do continue to receive a high-quality education, as well as just ensuring that we have clear communication with that student's parent and guardian so that we're ensuring that their needs are met, that they are clear on what the plan is moving forward, and that they understand that there is an option for them to return if they are indeed removed from the sex offender registry. So this is just a quick summary of the new definitions. I'll just go over the names and not the actual definition. So we have the registered student sex offender, school property, sex offender, and student. I'll give you all a second to review that. And then moving on, these are additional revisions to the regulation. And basically, as I already spoke, it explains the transition process for students who are removed from the registry and eligible to return back to school. But we also want to clarify that even with being removed, the student, if there was a victim who was in Baltimore City Public Schools, that they are not to attend the same school or be on the same transportation route as them, even if they are no longer listed on the registry. And we did a lot of discussion on, or thoughts around how we would ensure that the student who becomes a sex offender registrant is being able to have access to educational opportunities and things like that. But we also want to highlight the fact that we already have policies in place to support the victim of the student registrant, because that is just as important. And these are some of the things that we would have aligned for that student, especially if they are in the same school community. We want to ensure that if they would like to, they have the opportunity to transfer. Transportation accommodations are being made, and just also that they have referrals and access to student counseling, as well as any kind of academic support that they may need immediately within the incident, or even with them transitioning, if they choose to, into a new school. So I know a lot of the revisions are based around a student who becomes a sex offender, but we want to just highlight the fact that we do have support for the victims. And as I stated, these policies are already in place. We would just make sure that we adapt them in this kind of transition. So this is the upcoming schedule. Obviously today we're at policy committee, and we'll be back in April for our first reader and June for our second reader. And basically we had both internal and external stakeholder engagement. The initial point of revision for this, we had to do a lot of work with our internal partners, enrollment choice and transfer, legal, obviously, the Re-Engagement Center, as well as other small departments within the school's office. And then also we have external stakeholders who we reach out to for feedback, and if requested, they can have feedback sessions. So these are the list of people that we would like to engage with as we move along with this revision and changes to align with the state law.
Excellent.
And that's it.
Great. Thank you, Cora. I really appreciate it.
Mhm.
Let me turn it over to my fellow board member colleagues for any questions they may have. Oops. Commissioner Coy, are you commenting?
No, I hadn't said anything, no.
Okay. Commissioner Esposito, do you have any comments or questions about the policy as written?
Nothing yet, no.
Okay. One question that did come to mind for me is just thinking a little bit about students who transfer into the system. And I'm sorry if I misoverlooked that. So students who may be on a registry in another jurisdiction or another state, how are they covered by this policy, or how do we make sure that our policy captures where they
Right.
may be?
So basically, when we did a lot of our initial feedback with our enrollment choice and transfer, their obligation, if they transfer a student, is to report it. And that is the understanding as well from another jurisdiction. It is their obligation to report it to us. And that comes along with the transfer paperwork. However, I do want to highlight the fact that this would be more at an administrative level, because those things are confidential, because it does, involve our juveniles. But the same way that we would transfer that information, the other school jurisdictions, they do have that legal obligation to, bring that information to us as well.
Got it. Okay. Commissioner Esposito?
Yeah, I did see that like if they go out of state, like the state process, if they leave the state, they fall off the registry. Is there a way to catch folks that come back, like return back to the state?
So I think that this, and our legal can step in at any time to cap on this, but I do believe that in our brainstorming meeting sessions, legal is working on a system with the Department of Juvenile Services to set up some type of notification system. Because this is still new, this is not even a year old, we don't have everything mapped out yet. However, legal did take initiative to get ahead of it, to try to reach out to some partners and see what that final process would look like for tracking and then reactivating this. We also have a system inside of Infinite Campus where this information is flagged. However, this is something that an administrator only would see. This is protected information. So if that student and is a registered sex offender and they're in Baltimore City Public Schools, there is a flag put in their case file. If a student leaves and comes back, their student ID number does not change or anything like that. So once their file is reactivated, that alert will be there, and then whoever has access to can open up that portion of it and see that the flag is there. And I see Rebecca just popped on, so go ahead and add what you need.
No, I can jump in. So legally, if a young person is on the juvenile sex offender registry, if they leave the jurisdiction, they are supposed to register with the police department in the new jurisdiction. And then the police department is supposed to notify the local school district. So similarly, if a youth was coming into Baltimore City, they would need to go to Baltimore Police Department, register with their juvenile registry, and then the Baltimore Police Department is actually responsible for notifying city schools. And so we are in the process of working with our school police as well as the Baltimore City Police Department to just ensure that they are providing that information to us and collecting it appropriately and providing it quickly to make sure we have a list of all young people in Baltimore City on the registry.
Yeah, and just a comment from like the community, because like we've been talking about safety in like a lot of different ways. And is there any type of notification that would go to the parents of possible victims to notify them that somebody may have possibly like re-entered the state? Like, is there any like coordination that could go to like the parents to notify them, or is that?
That would not, I mean, there's a lot of legal protections around juvenile records, so that would not be coming from us. So, you know, if there was a young person on the juvenile registry, we would not notify the school. We would not make it public that they were
I
on the
just mean the victim.
Right.
Like,
So it's not our job legally to notify the victim if the student sex offender returns to school. There's a lot of protections for the juvenile sex offender. So I don't know if Josh wants to jump in.
I think, though, that it's a good question, and we'll check just to make sure as we go forward into first reader that we are doing this consistent with the law, because I think that one flag that we've done is to be very attuned to this, if there is a student victim, to the student victim and their families and the experience of this to make sure that that's covered there. So we'll follow up as we go forward.
Thank you.
Then another question I had is just a clarification on the age. In the very earlier part of the presentation, you discussed 14 years of age as the benchmark. Is that, help me understand a little bit more about, is that state law in which we're starting to look at juveniles who are covered by this policy, or is that city school policy?
So that's state law. So the legal change only is applicable to students on the sex offender registry. And so there's two registries. There's the public registry for adults, and then there's the juvenile sex offender registry. According to state law, in order to be on the juvenile sex offender registry, you must be of at least 14 years of age and also convicted of one of the offenses that was laid out in the PowerPoint. So typically, you know, the most severe sexual offenses. If the young person is, let's say, 12, and is convicted of, you know, a lesser offense, they would not be on the juvenile sex offender registry. Or if they were 12 and were convicted of, you know, rape or one of the offenses that normally would land someone on the registry, because of their age, they would not be put on the juvenile registry. And so in our feedback with internal stakeholders, there was just confusion. They just wanted to understand who would be on the registry. And so we just wanted to make it clear that according to Maryland law, only students 14 years of age and up would this new policy change be applicable to.
Okay. Thank you for the clarification. Commissioner Esposito, is your hand? Old hand? New hand?
Oh, that was from before. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Are there any additional comments or questions from my fellow commissioners?
Hi. I really quickly just wanted to say I'm here. I'm so sorry that I got out of school at 4 p.m. So this is the earliest I joined. But thank you. I'm catching up.
No problem. Did you have any comments or questions for the team, Commissioner?
Not right now. I joined about 3 minutes ago, so I feel like I don't really have enough of a picture yet to really have any questions. I didn't have any questions prepared beforehand, though.
Okay. If one arises, what you can do is submit questions to the staff, and they are more than happy to get back with you.
All right. Yeah.
I'll just add one, which is a thank you for the work on this. I know it's a heavy topic and one that, you know, we, you know, need to be concerned about at different points in time. But thank you for all the work, city schools staff, that you are doing to think about all aspects of this and what we should do to protect students.
Awesome. Thank you, Cora. Thank you, and thank you to the staff. All right, we'll move forward to public comment because that was our only presentation today. So I believe Melissa Schober is signed up this afternoon. Is Melissa with us? And I'm just looking through really quickly the invite list here. Tanisha, do you know if she had submitted written comment or was she intending to present this afternoon?
No, her email was to submit, she wanted to do live comment today.
Okay, it may have been because of the time change.
No, we did inform her of the time change as well.
Okay, if can we incorporate any comments that she has at a later point in time?
Oh, yes, absolutely. This is
Okay.
just a preliminary discussion for this
Okay.
item. This item will come before the board again.
Okay, great, fantastic. I just want to make sure we're inclusive of anybody else's comments. So, were there anybody else from the public who would like to provide
Hello,
comments?
can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh, great. Sorry. Apparently I was on mute and desperately trying to unmute and it wasn't working. Apologies.
That's it. Is this Melissa?
Okay, quickly. So
Let me
although
ask,
I
is this
am a member,
Melissa? I just.
Oh, I'm
I can't
sorry.
see you.
I'm
Could you
sorry?
introduce yourself? Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, sorry. I'm Melissa Schober. I'm the parent of a Baltimore City school student. And although I am also a Disability Rights Maryland appointee to the Parent and Community Advisory Board, I'm speaking in a personal capacity today. So in previous testimony to the board as a whole, I raised concerns regarding procurement for a weapons detection system, including sharing data from Dorchester County, Maryland, showing that these systems, even when using a setting other than the most sensitive, consistently and frequently alert when students are carrying innocuous items like Chromebooks, eyeglass cases, water bottles, and umbrellas. At Thursday's public PCAB meeting, I raised concerns about the presentation from staff, pardon me, and potential need to change policy JIH and JIH-RA on student search and seizure. Following that meeting, when revisiting JIH and JIH-RA, I was surprised to see that JIH-RA, the administrative reg, had already been altered to add the words weapons detection system, and the change was dated January 9th, 2023. As per policy BGA, the CEO may alter administrative regulations, but that same policy also requires the CEO to forward such changes to the board as an information item. After reviewing board docs, I can't see where that informational item was presented to the policy committee or the board as a whole. It does not appear on the December, December board meeting agendas, and the January meetings of this committee and the board as a whole occurred after January 9th. I happened upon this change and am concerned about transparency of such changes if they do not appear on any public agenda. I would ask that this committee please commit to posting a list of administrative regulatory changes in a public location accessible, even if such changes do not require a board vote. Such an action aids parents and advocates in maintaining a complete understanding of current implementation strategies and emphasizes family and community engagement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Melissa, for that information. I am not prepared to provide a response to that today, but what would be helpful is let us have some time to review what you brought to the board today and provide a response, if that would be okay.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Commissioner Esposito or Commissioner Coy or Katsapi, do you want to respond to Ms. Schober's comments? Okay.
Just say thank you as well for bringing up the item.
Yep. All right. Are there any other additional public comment this afternoon? Okay. We do not have any compliance reports this go round, so there were none submitted. Just as a reminder that members of the public can review previous compliance reports. They're listed in the library section of board docs under compliance reports. All right. Before I go through an adjournment and next steps of items, we do have some additional time. So I just want to ask in my fellow commissioners if they had anything they wanted to discuss this afternoon before we move through our very short agenda. Nothing additional? It's so quiet.
I know it is so quiet. There's some things I've been working on more broadly, and I was thinking about like we could, but I don't feel like they're quite ready for conversation here. But one of the things is, as I'm relatively new to this committee, although I'm no longer the newest, as we talked about earlier today, Commissioner Esposito, and I guess Commissioner Katz-Ogby. I guess I'm more on the I'm in the middle of age on this committee. But I've taken all the different policies that are in the library and sort of like started to sort of check off the ones that I have now read fully through, and that we've started to go through, and it's just there's a lot, there's a lot of, but each one certainly addresses different issues, and I appreciate the years of experiences and wisdom that it's one of those, when you look at the different policies, they exist most often, not exclusively, but most often because something happened, and that like we are learning from what happened and are working proactively to ensure it doesn't happen again, or to ensure something does happen positive, right? But I just wanted to, I guess, give voice to the depth and the breadth of that work that has come before, and the role of my role is trying to understand and digest that history to add the current context of what we are seeing in 2023 to those policies, and simplifying. One of the things that I think we could also take a look at, because policy sometimes begets policy. At some point, there's probably an exercise of evaluating if some things are not as needed, or that to reduce down, because to the extent to which there's too many policies for staff to know what all the policies are, that would suggest they may not be able to implement them with fidelity, when there's so many that you can never possibly know what all of them are. Now, obviously, many folks in the school system, a few of the policies impact them most directly, and so there's a sense that some are most directly related to classroom teachers, some are most directly related to those that are working in certain offices and central office, but that's certainly on my mind as I've been going through this, is how do we help ensure that those who need to know about policies have the information they need, and that we don't have so many policies that there's 1,000 ways you could do it wrong, and you couldn't possibly know all the things that you should be doing because we have just made it so Byzantine and complicated. So those are the broader meta questions that I do ask myself when I guess can't sleep or something. I don't know when, but whenever I'm looking through the different policies and trying to prepare in my role.
Yeah, and I know in the past year, the staff, and before that predates my time on the board, is that the staff has done periodic kind of looking at policies to ensure both alignment with state law, that we're covered from legality's sake, that there are not duplicit policies, and they also reflect kind of current needs in the system. And so there are some policies that are combined, eliminated, revised, and enhanced, or added. And so, we're in a lot of respects, like at the precipice of like needing to, in our roles of kind of pushing policy as a lever for change in the system, but very much beholden on staff who understand how these policies are implemented, to really think about what the needs are, and then some of the challenges that we have on the implementation side. And so it's kind of like a fine balance that we have in terms of policy development in our role as a board.
One additional thought that I'll offer up as well is, it did take me a minute to sort of orient myself, especially with the 3-letter codes. In my first introduction to policies, I was trying to understand if those were acronyms for something, but then I appreciated learning that I believe they originate with the NSBA, if I'm not mistaken, but that there is a set, almost like the Dewey Decimal System. that these are, kind of predefined, and it allows for the ability to look across organizations, across school districts that use the same system to be able to understand how different districts are setting up their policies relating to the same topic. So it's, I appreciate that ability to look across districts, including inside board docs, the search functionality for that. But it certainly takes a little bit getting used to, and then the shorthand can be really effective, but it can feel disorienting, I know, at first glance.
Commissioner Esposito?
Hi, yeah, I know I'm new, but I got a request today asking if there are opportunities to create like working groups or like ad hoc groups with like the community to like
In
look at
terms
some.
of policy information, or
Sorry, what was that?
could you give us a little bit more clarity on the request?
Yeah, so like the areas of expertise that exist on the school board, there are some perspectives that aren't represented, but are definitely impacted by policy and just like the way that the school system operates. So like getting ahead of it and making sure that it's inclusive to those groups, having them as like a second pair of eyes to see ways that it could be improved so that we don't have to, like, I see the city making initiatives to include certain demographics in like their hiring processes, and making sure that it, like, the staff in the city is representative of the growing populations in the community. So I kind of see people left out of the equation being able to speak to those issues themselves. So I was just wondering if there's opportunities for those folks to get together and also have time to give feedback to the school system outside of, like, I know PCAP exists, but even that is inaccessible to some folks.
Let me phone a friend, Chief Sivan, who can let us in on just a little bit more about the legal structure and like why it's in place and where the opportunities are.
Thanks. Great question, Commissioner Esposito. You should see in each policy presentation to the committee, towards the end of the presentation, a set of slides about engagement strategy. And they are roughly aligned to maybe 2 years ago, year and a half ago, the board created a tiering structure for policies. So policies that are likely to have the most community input or of interest have a higher level of engagement than a policy that fundamentally is the law told us, like sort of like the one today. Law said it would change and said we have to do something, and we're coordinating to that. Not to say that engagement is not very important in those policies too, but so you'll see a proposed engagement strategy, and we've often had great conversations in this committee about where a commissioner says, "Oh, I think another group would be really interested in this. We should make sure to reach out to them." But that is our effort, to try to identify groups that would be interested. We've now, as Commissioner Katz-Dog knows, we've been really diligent, or trying to be more diligent, about getting ASCBC involved and gearing our presentation to them, and also thinking about other ways to engage students. So we're really open, and I think that part of a policy discussion when it comes to you is about us proposing something and then really wanting the commissioners to weigh in about opportunities to go beyond. And while we, typically for all policies try to hit PCAB and ASCBC and CCAC and the unions if appropriate and the charter board, there are often areas where we go much broader. Tina Hickhubbard and her team came about the community schools policy, and there was a lot of effort, engagement to reach out. Similarly, on the student organizations policy, there's been a lot of engagement there. So again, that was a long-winded way to say we're really attuned to that, but also looking to commissioners to chime in and think about other ways to engage folks in this process.
And I think, let me build on that, and this is my personal opinion, is yes, there are a lot of unrepresented voices like in our stakeholder groups, and I recognize that fully, that there are a lot of underrepresented voices. And so, I think there are multiple avenues in which, we have existing, but to the extent that like we're thinking about, more opportunities. So like, for example, like we have the community forums that we've set up. There's other kind of outreach methods that we're trying to do as a board. So like, I'm thinking about the board's role, and there's a difference between the board's role and the systems management role. And so I think we have to kind of delineate the two to make sure that we understand like where, from a board perspective, we can lean in.
Yeah, and sorry. And the group that I'm thinking about is like the Spanish speaking community. And so like a lot of the spaces that currently exist as opportunities for engagement are kind of exclusive and not necessarily inclusive of them. Like, because I mean, it's one thing to have like a flyer that's like in Spanish, but to make it like truly like collaborative, I think it's been very difficult for them. So that's why they were asking.
And is this like in terms of like having them as a recognized group, or is it a like? Are you looking?
I think so. I think it would be like a working group that can look at all things going on with the school board and bridge that gap, whether it's employment, whether it's student needs from the community, or just like. Because there's groups that they can't necessarily plug into directly, having their own space, speaking to their own needs, I think is very helpful.
Okay. And Chief Sibben, if I'm not wrong, like, is this something that the board may address during its annual, even before the annual business meeting?
Right, and I think also we will take back as we think about our engagement strategy, how to engage through the communications office and Tina Hyde-Hubbard's team of our Spanish-speaking communities and parents in this process. So that's something we will take back from this. Now, John Turner does a good job making sure all committee meetings are reflected. So looking forward to following up there too.
Is that helpful,
Thank you.
Commissioner Esposito? Great.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Good. Yeah. Are there any other comments from my fellow board members? Commissioner Katzapi, anything additional?
I really, the only thing that I can think of is just that I support what Commissioner Esposito was suggesting. I think that it would be a really good idea to try to increase the number of stakeholder groups that we're recognizing during our board meetings. And I think that especially right now, like a lot of our stakeholder groups don't even necessarily give public comment at every board meeting, which is obviously doesn't mean that they're not valuable, but I do think that it would be helpful to have more people being more engaged in a lot of aspects of the policy process. I think that trying to create new groups of communities that might have felt excluded or been excluded from the other groups that we have, I think is a net positive for being able to make policy that better serves the community.
Appreciate that. All right. So that comes to the end of our time. Just a couple of housekeeping things to close out our time together today. So our next meeting date is going to be March 21st, 2023. It'll also be virtual from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We have a couple of agenda items that we are aware of at this point in time. So policy FCA, so it's the Tier 2 closing of schools policy. Policy JAA, which is student organization, so it's incorporating student governance and student rights and responsibility, Tier 3. And then on the compliance report side, we'll get hit heavy because we didn't have any this time. So policy ACE, which is on service animals, policy BLA, procedures and appeals and hearings, policy BLB, which is also procedures, appeals and hearings, and policy BLC, procedures and appeals and hearings. I think that will do it for us this go round. So I thank everybody, the member of the public, my fellow commissioners for joining this afternoon, and for the public's patience with rescheduling and pushing this out by 30 minutes. So thank you. I personally am thankful for your generosity there. Everybody have a good evening, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks, Tanisha, for your
Bye,
support.
everyone.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.